ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the 7 o'clock main news. In tonight's headlines, His Highness the Deputy Emir and Crown Prince expresses appreciation and gratitude for well-wishers on the Eid al-Fitr holiday. The UN accuses Israel of launching a deadly attack on a school housing thousands of refugees in Gaza. The Iraqi government allocates more than 500 billion Iraqi dinars to assist Iraqis displaced by militants. And the US joins EU in announcing expanded economic sanctions against Russia over the crisis in the Ukraine. His Highness the Emir Sheikh Sabah Al-Ahmed Al-Jaber Al-Sabah sent a cable of congratulations to His Majesty King Mohammed VI of Morocco on the occasion of the 15th anniversary of his accession to the throne. His Highness the Deputy Emir and Crown Prince Sheikh Nawaf Al-Ahmed Al-Jaber Al-Sabah sent a cable of congratulations to His Majesty King Mohammed VI of Morocco on the occasion of the 15th anniversary of his accession to the throne. His Highness Sheikh Jaber Al-Mubarak Al-Hamad Al-Sabah, the Prime Minister, also sent a similar cable. His Highness the Deputy Emir and Crown Prince Sheikh Nawaf Al-Ahmed Al-Jaber Al-Sabah expressed appreciation and gratitude for Kuwaiti nationals and expatriates who congratulated him on the occasion of Eid al-Fitr. His Highness the Deputy Emir and Crown Prince said the well-wishes' sentiments reflected the unity of the Kuwaiti society, wishing the people all the best on the festive occasion and Kuwait further development and prosperity under the wise leadership of His Highness the Emir Sheikh Sabah Al-Ahmed Al-Jaber Al-Sabah. More than 60 people were killed in the Gaza Strip by Israeli airstrikes and tank shelling today as bodies were piling up in morgues across the region. Many Palestinians struggling to cope with the mounting casualties are foregoing funerals, hastily burying their dead as the Israeli military intensifies its bombing campaign. Our correspondent in Gaza, Majd Al-Wahidi, has more details in the following report.
Gaza, Israel's war has left thousands of families homeless and displaced. UN schools were a shelter for those who fled the war and bloodshed. But safe havens are no longer safe. At Jabalia in northern Gaza, this school was heavily bombarded by Israeli warplanes, leaving at least 16 people killed and others wounded.
The woman and her child dead. Why? What was their guilt? We were escaping from our house and the death. But Israelis are interested in taking our life from us. We are no longer safe.
It's not only schools. This power plant, the sole supplier of electricity, has been destroyed by an Israeli artillery shelling. This means that the already severe power outages in the besieged coastal enclave are worsened even further, and hospitals where war casualties are arriving nearly every second are now suffering from a severe crisis.
Targeting the power plant is part of Israel's policy in its war and aggression on the Gaza Strip. This will reduce our daily work in the health sector because this electricity is needed in the treatment of hundreds of important and special operations inside the hospital.
The war Israel calls Operation Protective Edge has brought nothing but displacement, destruction, and bloodshed to the Gaza Strip. Nearly 80% of those who died are civilians. The UN has increased its pressures to reach a ceasefire. But while the international community and leaders argue over ceasefire proposals, the reality in Gaza remains an ongoing tragedy with no clear solution in sight. The impact of this war has become a heartbreaking reality of the conflict. Everyone here has a story of loss and suffering. No one is safe, and the whole population is trapped between a no-go zone and fears of death and destruction. Majd Al-Wahidi, Kuwait TV, Gaza.
The aid agency UNRWA has condemned as a flagrant violation the agency's neutrality the Israeli shelling of a crowded UN school, killing at least 15 people and wounding 90 people today. UNRWA spokesman Christopher Gunnis said the UN was investigating the incident, adding that the initial assessment is that it was Israeli artillery that hit the school.
There have been 3 occasions since this conflict started where we found rockets, weapons in our schools, and we have condemned it. We have condemned it as a flagrant violation of our neutrality, and we've reported it to all of the parties concerned.
Iraq's Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki called upon Iraqis in cities which are under the control of the terrorists to join the army and take part in what he called it a clearing journey. In his weekly address, al-Maliki said that his government had given 500 billion Iraqi dinars to displaced Iraqis and allocated another 500 billion dinars for the displaced until they could return to their homes. Last month's rapid advance by the extremist group, which captured Iraq's second largest city, Mosul, and overran much of northern and western Iraq, plunged the country into its worst crisis since the withdrawal of US troops at the end of 2011, with more than 1 million Iraqis now classified as internally displaced or refugees. Egypt's security forces have found an explosive-loaded car in the Giza province just hours after a car bomb in the same area detonated accidentally, killing 3 suspected militants. According to media sources, the first bomb detonated while the car was driving in the Al-Saf area, while police tightened security in the region, foiling another car bomb attack and arresting the suspected militants inside. In earlier attacks, 3 suspected militants died when a bomb they were carrying in their car apparently went off by accident. Egypt has witnessed an upsurge in attacks, mainly targeting security forces and installations since the ouster of President Mohamed Morsi last year. European foreign officials said today that the new trade sanctions on Russia will have an immediate effect on its already struggling economy. A day earlier, Europe approved an arms embargo and backed sanctions against Russian state-owned banks and the energy sector in a move to increase pressure on Russian President Vladimir Putin to end his country's support for separatists in eastern Ukraine. British Foreign Secretary Philip Hammond said EU economies would also be affected, even though sanctions were designated to maximise the impact on Russia and minimise the impact on EU economies. Meanwhile, US President Barack Obama announced expanded US sanctions on Russia, joining the European Union in a coordinated effort to use Russia's economy as leverage to compel Moscow to stop fueling the deadly conflict in Ukraine. Fighting between Ukrainian forces and pro-Russian separatists today again prevented international investigators reaching the Malaysia Airlines MH17 crash site. Earlier in the day, an investigation team from the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe was stopped on its way to the site in eastern Ukraine and warned of shots being fired on and around the route there. The lead Dutch investigator said there will be no convoy with Dutch experts travelling from Donetsk to the site where the flight crashed, as the situation along the route is unsafe. Over 200 bodies have already been recovered and sent to the Netherlands for identification, while some foreign governments whose citizens died in the crash have complained that some human remains have not been recovered. A UN-backed tribunal began today a hearing to prepare for the genocide trial of the 2 senior surviving leaders of Cambodia's Khmer Rouge, under whose rule an estimated 1.7 million people died in the late 1970s from starvation, exhaustion, disease and execution. The regime's head of state, Khieu Samphan, and Nuon Chea, right-hand man to the group's late leader Pol Pot, are set to face sentencing next week. Samphan and Chea are being tried for crimes against humanity, related mostly to the communist group's forced movement of millions to the countryside when it took power in 1975. According to judges, this week's initial hearing will cover technical matters, while the actual trial is set to begin in the last quarter of the year. 2 people died and several hundreds were forced to evacuate as surging floodwater submerged villages across Romania. As the rains caused landslides and many roads in the region were blocked by mud and debris, Interior Minister Gabriel Oprea said that floods were raging across central and southwestern parts of the country. Torrential rains also affected neighbouring Bulgaria, where authorities said that a woman died in the floods and another person was reported missing. Driverless cars will be tested on roads in as many as 3 cities in the United Kingdom in a trial programme starting from January. Government officials said that driverless cars could transform Britain's road network and improve safety and traffic flow while reducing carbon emissions. Officials said the plan will include 2 types of driverless technology and will last up to 3 years. Other countries, including Japan and the United States, are already developing driverless car technology. For a chance to see our reports again, please visit our YouTube channel at MOI Kuwait News. And to recap tonight's news, here are the headlines once again. His Highness the Deputy Emir and Crown Prince expresses appreciation and gratitude for well-wishers of the Eid al-Fitr holiday. The UN accuses Israel of launching a deadly attack on a school housing thousands of refugees in Gaza. The Iraqi government allocates more than 500 billion Iraqi dinars to assist Iraqis displaced by militants. And the US joins the EU in announcing expanded economic sanctions against Russia over the crisis in the Ukraine. Thank you for joining us.